In this video, I will demonstrate how to use advanced color grading, previously known as split toning, in Adobe Lightroom CC. As I'm recording this video, this is a new feature, so you might need to go to your Creative Cloud and update the Lightroom app. Over in Lightroom, find an image where you want to make changes to the midtones, shadows, and highlights of a photo. If you're not quite sure what photo to use, start with a black and white image and experiment with the settings first. Click on the Edit icon, and then the panel for Color, and find Color Grading. This drop-down will show you the options for color grading, and this button will turn the color grading on and off. You will see 3 color wheels that allow you to adjust the tints and shades of the tones in your image. Click on the selection point outside the circle and you can drag it around the wheel to change the color of your midtones. But you won't see any changes on a black and white image yet because the saturation for colors has been removed. Click the saturation point in the middle of the color wheel and drag it to the outer edge to add more saturation back into the image. Now when you move the selection point, you will see the midtone colors change in your photo. And I'll choose a fun green for this image. Move the saturation circle to the outer edge to increase the saturation and move it inside the circle towards the middle to decrease the saturation. The second color wheel controls the shadows in your image, and I'll warm up my shadows by adding a little red-violet to them. And then the third color wheel adjusts the highlights, and I'll tone down the highlights in mine by adding a cool blue. This slider adjusts the luminance or brightness of the tones. Keep your eye on the green midtones on the back wall in my photo. Moving the slider to the left will darken the midtones, and moving the slider to the right will brighten the midtones. You also have a luminance slider underneath the shadows, and keep your eye on the red-violet shadows being cast on the wall and the countertop. Moving this slider to the left will darken them, and to the right lightens them. And for the luminance of my highlights, keep an eye on the blue countertop as I move the slider to darken and then lighten those colors. Down here you have 2 global sliders for all 3 tones. Blending adjusts where the colors overlap between the 3 tones. So moving the slider to the left will reduce any overlapping, meaning that each tone is more distinct. Sliding this to the right will blend the 3 tones together more. Double-clicking on a circle will reset any slider. Balance adjusts how the effects of each of the tones are balanced. So keeping the slider at 0 balances all 3 effects equally, but dragging it to the left is going to increase the effect of the shadows, and dragging it to the right increases the effect in the highlights. Clicking on these circles above brings up each color wheel independently and allows you to do more precise fine-tuning of the saturation and color for each tone. You also have more accuracy with luminance, and you can even type in an exact number that you would like. Again, clicking on the circles will reset everything back to 0. The midtone color wheel is the second icon, and you can make some more adjustments. And this icon will bring up the highlight color wheel. The final icon brings up the global color wheel, and here you can apply a color tone to an entire image while still leaving in place the changes you made to the midtones, highlights, and shadows. At the bottom of our screen, clicking this icon will show us the original image versus the changes we've made, and you can see that it has brought quite a cinematic drama to this black and white photo. Now let's apply these same settings to a version of this picture that's in color. So in this image, I will adjust the midtones, shadows, and highlights to try to match them with the previous settings. You can adjust the settings of your color photos however you would like. I just want to show you the difference. And here, the back wall has more of a yellow-green hue. The shadows are still quite red-violet, and there's some interesting effects happening with the shadows down here, but the countertop overall isn't really capturing the blue highlights like I had in the last picture. So I could come back to the individual icons and make further changes to try to get that effect as needed. Finally, let's take a look at this edited version versus the original colored photo, and you can see the drama that's been achieved with color grading. Let's also take a look at the black and white edited version. Here it is, and the image that started out as black and white versus this one, which has lots of browns to begin with. And lastly, I will save and export my work by clicking the Share button, Custom Settings, making sure I include my watermark, and I'll export this image to my Creative Cloud files in a folder that I have made for this unit, and I'll click Export. And that is how you use the advanced color grading to adjust midtones, shadows, and highlights in your images in Lightroom CC.